I'll do some more reading of Origins of the Gods by Andrew Collins and Gregory L. Little. Why do I do this? Well, part of this is for my health, because of my MS. I'm forcing myself to do something, and, and it's very embarrassing, but because of my inability to read, and because I always have a frog in my throat. But it's also forced me to learn, and I'll just let you know, I am now able to post videos and go live on my original channel. It was my second original channel, which is ORD2, the Fortean Amorite, in which I will continue to post videos. I just posted a video, actually. I think I just posted the second one today. So they allowed me today to start posting videos. So the ban was short. This channel, I'll continue to do the reading. I think that's what I'll do. Is this channel I'll be doing readings, and the other channel I'll do the videos. But both channels I should be able to also do live. So tonight I have 2 lives. One, I want to go over some images like the one we're looking here now of entities that I filmed in the stars. And then at midnight, and the reason I do it at midnight is hopefully this time it'll work. So far, like we tried to do one earlier today with Daniel. He's from Kenya, and his story. It's a man who is believing God, and how he is probably behaving more like a Christian than anybody I know. And saying that, I mean, I don't agree with a lot of we probably wouldn't agree a lot about the theology as far as what the book says and deeper matters, but I don't know if it's really, maybe the deeper matter really is what he's doing, which is taking care of his neighbors, loving and taking care of the widows and the orphans and the single mothers and all that kind of stuff. So him and his wife were doing a righteous work, and if we could find any way to help them raise money to get a roof over their house, and that'd be awesome. You'll see. He makes what we go through look like kindergarten school. Anyways, we are now part 1, part 15, John Keel's Ultraterrestrials. John Keel, 1930 to 2009, was certainly one of the most influential writers in the UFO field. He began his career in writing about the paranormal in the 1950s and probably reached his peak in the 1970s and 1980s. He started out supporting the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but completely abandoned it in 1967 when he realized that the UFO phenomena was part of the bigger picture of the paranormal and psychic realm. He asserted that the small core of genuine paranormal and UFO cases were related to quantum physics ideas about space-time continuum. About the space-time continuum. In his 1971 book, Our Haunted Planet, Keel related that an intelligent electromagnetic energy source created parahumans, mimics the humans, and that appeared in the same places. Centuries after centuries, such locations are often described as window areas, portals, or gateways. They are weak spots in the Earth's etheric envelope through which beings from other space-time continuums seep into our reality. He mentioned that the gods of the ancient world had warned humans not to look directly at them because the manifestations were composed of pure electromagnetic energy, radiating large amounts of X-rays, ultraviolet light, and gamma rays. Exposure to such energy causes conjunctivitis and skin burns. Where did I get brain? Something many close encounters witnesses experienced. It was the transmogrification of the electromagnetic energy that caused changes in color and light intensity in the objects and the light beings that were created by this force. The entities gathered electrical energy to assume a temporary physical visible form. He called them ultraterrestrials. Keel made two basic assumptions about the manifestations. First, the entities are real and not purely a psychological phenomena, but they do affect humans' consciousness. Second, they have a purpose or need to communicate with humans. Now, electrical, these. He talks about the entities gathered electrical energy to assume temporary physical or visible form. He called ultraterrestrials. That's what I think is what was happening when we're filming these entities popping out of trees. I think that the trees themselves produce a certain amount of, or maybe a greater amount of electrical magnetic energy than we realize. And in 1970, Keel mentioned that the vast majority of genuine UFO reports were of luminous, transparent, translucent light forming visual objects that change shape and color. We know today that assertion is true. To Keel, they were paraphysical manifestations, not composed of solid matter as we conceptualize it. When a human witness gets close to the manifestation, reality is distorted by forces that alter the normal space-time continuum. At the time Keel was writing, quantum physics was in its infancy. Keel related that the underlying force was composed entirely of electromagnetic energy that could change its frequency at will. It remained invisible most of the time because it was outside the visible electromagnetic frequencies, but it could become visible by manipulating its own electromagnetic frequency. An intelligence of some kind was behind the force, but it never appeared in its true form. That is, it adjusted its appearance to the situation. It had a purpose behind its actions, but Keel related that the purpose was beyond our understanding. He also asserted that the entities involved in UFO contact experiences are the same entities involved in religious and spiritual manifestations. People such as Joan of Arc, Casey, Swedenborg would be included in this list, along with many Native American shamans who had experiences during rituals. The entities, which are typically described as angels, aliens, or earth spirits, start out as an energy mass, then alter their electromagnetic frequency into the visible light frequency. At that point, the entity organizes itself into atoms and can produce any desired form. Its visible form adjusts to the unconscious expectations of its participants and the general cultural beliefs dominating at that particular time. That assertion certainly fits the manifestations that occurred at Zetium in Cairo, Egypt. Electromagnetic energy. Well, we have mentioned the electromagnetic energy spectrum many times. It is necessary to view some aspects of it again. The electromagnetic spectrum is a vast range that extends from extremely long radio waves to extremely short gamma rays. Near the middle of the electromagnetic spectrum is visible light, which makes up less than 5% of the entire spectrum. Our eyes contain rods, and ones that function as tiny biological radio frequency antennas that are tuned to receive only a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. If we were able to see all of the electromagnetic waves, we would be completely blinded by the myriad of waves around us that are continually generated by both natural and human created electromagnetic fields. The aeroforms and biological antenna. So once again, aeroforms and biological antenna. One of Keel's inspirations came from a 1957 book by Meade Lane, 1882 to 1961 is when he lived. Lane called UFOs aeroforms and said that they emerged into visible light frequencies from a plane of existence different from ours. Lane described the process as a conversion of energy and a change of vibratory rate. The materializing object or entity appears to be solid substance until the energy and frequency are converted back to their starting rate. Keel related that the source has to be a form of intelligent energy that can create and then disintegrate matter by manipulating its frequencies. It was also timeless because it existed in a different realm, not confined to our normal realm. It has existed from the beginning of time. However, it needs a source of energy to materialize. And back then, Keel was writing, little was known about Earth-generated plasmas. Earlier, it was mentioned that the rods and cones of our eyes function as biological antennas, as a biological antenna that are tuned to receive only visible light frequencies. In his 1975 book, The Eighth Tower, Keel proposed that the entire human body functions as a antenna receiving messages. Quote, "You and I are biochemical robots controlled by a powerful radiation being broadcast," end quote, over the electromagnetic spectrum. Neurophysicist Michael Persinger spent his entire career publishing dozens of research studies showing how human consciousness and other biological functions were affected by electromagnetic frequencies. Over the course of his decade-long research, Persinger was able to beam thoughts and words into the minds of subjects through small EMFs using various frequencies. Persinger's research was able to open the minds of subjects to experience UFO abductions, to meet what were interpreted as angels and gods, and to experience spiritual rapture. Although the use of small EMFs while the subject was enclosed in a copper-shielded laboratory setting, the copper shielding blocked out all intrusive electromagnetic waves. Isn't that interesting? Copper shielding, huh? Allowing the subject to only experience the specific EMF under study. One of the most consistent findings from Persinger's field research was that most odd and unusual paranormal experiences in the natural world tended to take place during times of relatively unstable geomagnetic activity that was produced by building tectonic strain. Tectonic strain that is building appears to be a clue to the continental and sustained release of energy. Let's try this again. That didn't make any sense. The tectonic strain that is building appears to be a clue to the continual and sustained release of the energy necessary for a manifestation to occur. In short, electromagnetic energy emerges when seismic pressure gradually builds, but the complete release of the strain leads to the energy being depleted. That is, when a large earthquake occurs, the tectonic pressure is reduced, leading to a cessation of paranormal activity. Persinger suspected that piezoelectricity, the release of electrons by certain rock and crystal formations were under pressure, was one probable source of the released energy. When rock with an internal crystalline structure, such as granite, is put under pressure, electrical charges form on the surface of the rock. The more pure the crystals involved and the larger the size, the greater the charge is. It has been found that tectonic strain can generate huge electrical charges, and that the charges follow fault lines or travel to a specific spot where they are discharged to the air, thus creating plasma. Devereux reported that such charges could reach 10,000 to 100,000 volts per square meter. While it might seem incredible that the needle in the UFO haystack is the idea that sentient plasmas emitting powerful electromagnetic waves produce paranormal events, that is not necessarily the entire story, but it is very likely that Keel was correct. The UFO phenomena, spiritual experiences, and paranormal manifestations are all related. They most likely stem from electromagnetic intrusions produced by natural earth energies that are well organized by geology, but not yet fully understood. Close contacts and interactions with intelligent plasma have created mystical and spiritual experiences involving angels, glowing beings, the gods of ancient cultures, and the gods of ancient cultures. At the same time, long-range observations of these plasmas have created typical UFO sightings of glowing orbs and flattened disks. When we are close to these emerging plasmas, we are the antenna that receives their messages. It is also very likely that intelligent or sentient plasmas, held together by self-generated magnetic fields, are the source of many ancient beliefs, a matter Andrew Collins reiterates and expands on in part 2 of this book. When the plasma forms, it creates an electromagnetic shield or bubble around itself. When one of these forms appears near a human, the electromagnetic bubble surrounds both the plasma and the participant. The electromagnetic field creates an energy wall, forming a consciousness interaction field. So it's good. The electromagnetic field creates an energy wall, forming a consciousness interaction field, meaning that the beliefs and mental state of the human inside the bubble interacts with the purposes of the plasma. Science completely breaks down at this point. My hunch is that quantum physics and nonlinear causality are directly related to how human consciousness and plasmas interact. However, the purpose and intelligence of the plasma are likely linked to dark energy, dark matter, and string theory. It is human interaction with these forces that has been the primary source of the gods. These interactions have occurred for all time. Of course, there remains the strong probability that ancient astronauts did make visits to Earth and interact with humans. As Sagan pointed out, it is a near certainty, but it was likely not as prevalent as many people hope for or suspect. The fact that many interactions reported with aliens in modern times involve what is a trickster element clearly points to the involvement of plasma-based manifestations. It's a critical needle in the haystack of needles. Archetypes and synchronicity. This is now part 1 of section 16. Archetypes and synchronicity. Carl Jung's idea about UFOs closely paralleled his idea about the paranormal. Both UFOs and paranormal phenomena, Jung believed, were related to synchronicity. The simplest definition of synchronicity is meaningful coincidences. So meaningful coincidence equals synchronicity. It is when at least two events occur in simultaneous space and time that seem to have a meaningful connection, but they apparently have no causal connection. A really simple example is when you think about a person and then the phone rings and it is that person. Jung would call that a meaningful coincidence. Synchronicity. Jung proposed the theory in a 1952 monograph after a conversation with Albert Einstein. Synchronicity events always involve archetypes. Synchronicity is, in fact, an archetype experience. As related in Chapter 3, Jung viewed the UFO phenomena as synchronicity between the Mandelas, the UFOs, is what he called Mandelas, being seen in the sky at the same time humanity was fearful of nuclear annihilation. The witnesses of the UFO appearances were psychologically looking for salvation and redemption from the increasing conflicts and thus interpreted the disc-like objects as salvation from space. Of course, that's the same essential message many of the Space Brothers gave to contactees, and the same explanation skeptics attributed to Zetium, Cairo, Egypt. However, we know that many UFO-like events occurred in ancient times and have certainly continued unabated in recent times. The phenomena appears to have always been with us. One could also speculate that humans are always in a time of conflict, always seeking redemption. Also mentioned in earlier chapters, there are numerous archetypes. Except for the Mandela, that being the UFOs, they come in opposite pairs, such as hero, villain, angel, demon, helper, trickster, and so on. Jung saw all archetypes as having a psychoid quality, meaning that they bridged the gap between psychological reality and physical reality. At times, archetypes could temporarily manifest into physical reality. According to Jung, they emerged from the ultraviolet end of the psychic spectrum. Back in 1984, I theorized that all of the archetypes that Jung conceptualized as opposites came into being at the time of creation. The resulting archetypical opposites were splinters from the whole. The Mandela, the UFOs, the symbol of the whole. After I learned much more about the Native American beliefs, it became clear that Jung's concept is the same fundamental idea presented in Cheyenne and Mound Builders' creation story. So try this again. Jung's concept is the same fundamental idea presented in the Cheyenne and Mound Builders' creation story. In the Native American story, the Big Bang occurred when the unity of the universal singularity began to swirl into two opposite forces, the dueling forces of creation and entropy. What emerged was a third-part universe with the physical earth as a space where the spiritual representatives of creation and entropy could act out their respective roles. Animals and various elements of the physical world represented aspects of this spiritual world, and all of them fit somewhere in the duality of creation versus entropy. Humans were placed on the physical earth to harmonize with these forces and maintain a balance between the opposites. Shamans thought to harmonize with these forces and thereby become aware of the connections that exist among everything. One way of looking at shamanistic practices is that their techniques are secret methods to produce synchronicity through conscious awareness. The secret is that synchronistic events are not created. What synchronicity really is then is a fleeting glimpse at the overall network of interrelated events that is present but non-discernible at all times. Synchronicity is a special condition of awareness that results from energization of the Mandela archetype. It is a sudden conscious awareness of the meaningful connections that exist between seemingly unrelated and uncausal events. Italics in original. Synchronicity is becoming aware that all things are connected. It was this awareness that many shamans in Native American ceremonies sought to achieve and even manipulate. Touching and vibrating and interacting with any part of the whole affected everything. That's really an awesome responsibility if you think about it. It implies that every action you take, every thought you have, somehow produces effects everywhere else. Many of the ancient cultures took that responsibility very seriously. It was seen as an obligation. Clearly, that idea is now lost. Of course, there is a bit more to the idea. The particular form that an emerging archetype takes on always relates to whatever cultural expectations the witnesses to its have. Okay, let's try this again. The particular form that an emerging archetype takes on always relates to whatever cultural expectations the witnesses to it have. This is an interaction between the underlying essence of the archetype and the mental state of the observer. It is as if the observer's beliefs plural, are projected into the archetype, which then acts in accordance with the projections. To the legitimate contactees, the archetypes they saw were interpreted as spaceships and beings from space, because in that era such images and ideas became popular in the culture. In ancient times they were the gods, sometimes residing on mountains or descending in fiery chariots. To the spiritualists they were angels or ghosts. To Native Americans they were the Mayan, powerful earth spirits and tricksters. They have always been with us and always will be. However, let's be very clear here. Their experiences were not imaginary. The participant, they were real. To the participant, they were real. When the Cheyenne Arrow priest Lou White Eagle experienced the little people while resting within a bubble of electromagnetic energy in my office many years ago, what he experienced was an updated form of the little people. Their appearance was one that fits more modern ideas of what these entities might look like. Their form of manifestation changes and alters the expectations of the observer, but you never see their true identity or true form. The reason is simple: they have no true underlying form. They are pure energy that configure themselves into whatever the circumstances requires. The energy involved is exotic plasma, but as the plasma forms and interacts with humans through the powerful EMF it produces, something else happens because of the observation. The plasma begins to crystallize internally and create what appears to be a living sentient being. The plasma's purpose, if it can even be called that, is to express creation or entropy in varying ways. In theory, this leads us to the conclusion that the force is located everywhere, virtually waiting for whatever synchronistic circumstance that may arise. Remember that the synchronicity is an awareness of the interconnectedness of everything, and so there is a mental aspect in the observer who interacts with the materializing plasma form. Thus the intentions and mental state of the observers, plural, play a very large role in such events. Think for a moment about Swedenborg, Joan of Arc, and Casey. All three of them saw unusual lights. All three had experiences with angels. All three were deeply religious. Their intentions probably had similar roots, but Swedenborg was in mental turmoil and crisis. Thus, Swedenborg never made it past the trickster aspect of his experience. That's a very important part. At Zaytium, Egypt, The emerging plasmas formed into symbolic religious figures, as the witnesses to the manifestations were living in a highly secular society in crisis. But the population was in fact deeply religious. The apparitions interacted with the observers' unconscious expectations and hopes for salvation, and what resulted was a powerful manifestation clearly symbolizing those hopes. By contrast, the scientists involved in the UFO studies at both Yakima and Piedmont and the Piedmont area in Missouri saw that they interpreted as natural plasmas that inexplicably interacted with them and even played with them, but they didn't reveal anything else to the scientists, whose expectations were that what they would find was a natural phenomenon. By contrast, many other witnesses in Missouri and Yakima had quite different experiences than did the scientists. They encountered entities as the objects drew near, and they saw definite structures, and they experienced powerful psychological effects. What all of this means is that the expectations and intentions of witnesses play a huge role in in what manifests. The plasma forms adjust to the observer. Had Young been around long enough to witness modern plasma research and advances in physics, I'm certain he would have incorporated those concepts into his ideas about the archetypes. I also think his idea about the psychoid nature of archetypes would have been explained by intelligent plasmas. But there is another element that's necessary to mention. It has been stressed that these entities and forces clearly interact with us and respond to that interaction. That is, they can appear when we seek them, but they will come even if we don't seek them at all. Seek them out. This is what I was thinking earlier, so we'll say that again. That is, they can appear when we seek them, but they will come even if we don't seek them out. The energies involved are everywhere, but they manifest in certain places frequently. We can call those locations haunted places, window areas, or portals. Ancient cultures created space specifically intended for contact with the energies. When done correctly, we can give the right circumstances and mental framework, somewhat control the interactions. We can achieve a type of harmony and balance when this is done properly, with the right intentions. But when we ignore the energies, their appearance brings disorder, and they do appear probably far more frequently than we realize. With our modern environment swirling with man-made EMFs almost everywhere, chaos may well be the result. In essence, what we are left with is that the legends of ancient gods may have come from multiple sources. Ancient astronauts may have really visited Earth, and their influence may still be seen today. It's also possible that many of the reliable modern UFO reports may well be stimulated by military research. That's a big one right there. And natural plasma phenomena. But we know that for all recorded history, shamans and medicine people have deliberately sought out contact with spiritual energies, and their and their actions proved, at least to them, that whatever is behind these energies has an intelligence and purpose, becoming in tune with the spiritual energies involved in synchronicity. Good place to stop.
You're going to try, go all the way. Otherwise, don't even start. If you're going to try, go all the way. This could mean losing girlfriends, wives, relatives, jobs, and maybe your mind.
Seasons don't change.